Welcome to a special episode of the Programmatic Digest podcast. I have one of my favorites on the podcast. We're like, at this point, we're cousins because first of all, we're both Africans. Okay, so y'all put some respect. But she's from Mali and I'm from Senegal. So, there's differences. There's differences, but all in good fun. I mean, Assetou, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast today. I'm so excited to interview you.
Thank you so much, Helen. Yes, we are cousins, Senegal, Mali. I think, during the AFCON of this year, that was really when that brotherhood really showed itself. Even though, you guys took the championship, we were very happy for you. I'm not gonna lie, Malians were very, very happy for you. I think I was very, very happy for you guys. So congrats on that. You guys got that. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here today.
I mean, we're really good, yeah. But you're right. We did develop a lot of you did see during, and for my people that don't know what the AFCON is, it's just the African Cup of Nation, and it's just
for soccer.
For soccer,
for the rest of the world.
It's every 2 to 3 years, and all the African nations just compete against each other in soccer. So the World Cup is happening this summer. So similar to that, except it's only African countries. Okay. So that's what we talk about, the AFCON. But yeah, so Assetou is here to talk about resiliency, but specifically in a industry like ours that's constantly changing. And I feel like some people see resilience as an underrated skill, but if you do not in your career, because then that's how you get burnt out. That's how you not perform, you underperform. That's how you do a whole lot of things because you have not developed that skill as easy as that super important skill that is resiliency. So before we talk about that, I said to you, maybe tell us a little bit about you. Did you wake up when you were 5 years old and told your mom and dad, I'm gonna work in ad tech, I'm gonna work in programmatic, watch?
Absolutely not. I actually woke up until I was going to be like, I was going to be a talk show host. That was the actual goal. And I had like all these little interviews, but no, I really liked communication. I think that's kind of where it stemmed from, right? Where it was like talking to people, mass communication, having people understand you or really getting a message through, right?
Yeah.
And I would say it was around college. I was the VP of campus affairs year, right? So I was basically the one. It was really just hosting a lot of parties, but I was hosting a lot of events. And through that, you have to use social media. And social media was really the quickest way to bring messages out, to promote, to get people to come to your events. And I really, really enjoyed that. So I actually have a bachelor's in political science. So like I said, I liked communication a lot. So, and we all know how important it is to communicate politically or in, I think a lot of things are political, but even communication in that sense as well.
Yeah.
So after that, like it was COVID, it was hectic and everything. So I actually joined a digital marketing boot camp. And that's where I learned about programmatic specifically. But all time, like we learned search, social media, influencer marketing, all of it. And from there, programmatic seemed like the most technical ones. I was like, okay, this is something that, not everybody is, or, it's niche enough that you could grow in it, but also enough that it, it has actual like value. So that's how I got into it, right? And from there on, I enjoy it. I've done so many different verticals. I've worked through political, retail, e-commerce, pharma, banking. So I've worked so many different verticals that it back to like the main thing is mass communication or just really getting a message across as the people you particularly need, but the audience that you would like as well. I think that's really like my joy of it.
Yeah,
and that's how I got.
That's so super cool because, and I like to ask this question because a lot of people answer the same way, like totally not. I think I wanted to be a singer when I was 5 years old.
I'm just gonna.
Y'all better get ready for programmatic karaoke, but they're going to be very surprised. But yeah, so because you're right. Until today is 2026. There's not a lot of those digital bootcamp, and that's one of the reasons why I started the Reach and Frequency program. Is because I realized like the only way to learn programmatic these days and those days were via the partner or finding the job. And it was tough at that time. Y'all thought it was tough finding a job now. It's even tougher, but well, I guess it would be tougher still. Anyway, it's still tough for the reason
Yeah.
that we expect the juniors to have a level of a 2 year experience level already, and that's not the case. And so I really took whatever I knew is a trader
Yeah.
certification made by a trader for traders. But then I
Mhm.
realized like, oh, this CS person wants to join the program. Oh, this salesperson actually bought the course but need more and they want coaching with it because like it's still so tough. And I feel
Yeah.
like it's a good segue into today's conversation because first you have so much experience. You just said you worked in several verticals. So I'd love to, I'll ask a few questions about your verticals experience in a second. But like one of the things that I like to ask is, I ask this question at the end, but I feel like I should ask it now. Like, what is some of those softer skill set maybe that
Mm.
you've developed working
Mhm.
in those positions? And you can share the position if you want or not.
Mhm.
What are those soft skill set that maybe
Mhm.
you wish you had right away or you had paid attention to as soon as you got started?
I would say one of the things I wish I had right away is really understanding the org chart for
Mm.
whatever company you're working with, or is
Oh, that's
really
good.
being able to be observant, really, right, in the company and what the business needs are and what a lot of different things are. I think one thing that I kind of developed as I went is, what is your vision? Tell me your vision, and my goal is to kind of execute your vision to the best of my ability. And the only way to be able to even do that is to really, number one, the person you're working with, whether it's a client or your manager, has to have a clear vision. That's like the step one, right? And sometimes that's not always the case, right?
Uh-uh.
So you have to be observant enough to know, okay, who has some level of control to
Yeah.
have the vision that, and to really, that they have this goal and they're trying to get this goal through X, Y, and Z person. And how do you fit into that machinery, honestly, and how do you make that work? I think being observant is one of like the biggest skills you can have just in life in general.
Yeah.
Something else that I wasn't as good at and I had to be was active listening. Really, yeah, you'd be
Wow.
surprised when you're working in communication, you have to actually listen to people, but not only just listening, but actively listening and really absorbing some information that they tell you, right? Like, and this has helped me with clients so much. Just, for example, I remember I was speaking to somebody and they were telling me about like their wife was going to Las Vegas
Uh-huh.
as a like, postpartum break after just having a
Aw.
baby. 2 years later, they got an opportunity because like when we spoke, that was the first thing I mentioned. And he was so surprised that I remembered this detail,
Yeah,
right?
there's details that people tell me, and I'm like, you remember? I just
Yes, and it's so important in this
yeah,
because like it's we're already in, like, it seems like a big industry, but
it
people
is.
know the main people, right?
Mhm,
It's not as big, right? So
mhm.
it's in when you're meeting people, it's important to kind of retain information
Definitely.
because you might know it will come in handy someday, right? So, and it also shows like personality, I would say, as, oh, like you actually pay attention. And I think that's so important because people feel valued when when you remember something about them, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's their child's name or a
Yeah,
specific event they were discussing, it makes people really see you as oh, like, okay, like you're actually you're genuine. And I
yeah.
think that's really important. So yeah, active listening, being observant, I would say
Mhm.
those are two soft skills that I wish I knew from the jump, like from the beginning of it
I like
all.
that a lot because that's so
Mhm.
true. Like when I first started at Infineon, that was maybe 6 months ago. I didn't know who was who. Okay.
Mhm.
But their onboarding was very on point. I
Yeah.
needed to just complete it.
Yeah.
And so the first month, I was like, who's who, what's what? And then my
Yeah.
manager was like, maybe you should go through the trainings. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, the one you told me to do on the first week that I didn't do. And so I did. And then I understand, like, oh, those are the business unit within this company. There is a
Mhm.
whole unit for in stadium, which is digital out of home in sports.
Mhm.
There's a whole one for media math, which is the internal
Mhm.
DSP I work on. There's a whole one for arrival, which is footfall measurement. There's another one for agentic DSP. It's like everything is within one. And I was like, oh, that's who. So yes, it's super important to take that time to actually do it. And I've been working in the industry for like 15 years, close to 15 years. So I had to
Mhm.
check myself up and be like, hold on, you still gotta learn these things for a
Mhm.
reason, right?
Yeah.
And so like be humble enough to be observant to do
Yeah.
things as easy as understanding your internal organization. But like the active listening, very often we listen to respond, not to understand. Even in
Mhm.
the child, if you're married, this is the same thing, okay?
Yeah.
But it's like it makes it so easy when you actually like, oh, this person is actually we're on the same team, right? Like we're not trying to fight each other. Like I'm actually trying to understand him. He's trying to understand me. And so I'm not saying you have to treat your coworkers like your husband or your wife or your partner. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
No.
that's the reason why we call it a soft skill. You learned
Yeah.
it somewhere else in your life, and then you bring it here and you remix it to be
Yeah.
successful here too.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you specifically because you have a lot of experience working within the agencies, right? So I just had Alexa Filmer on the podcast previously,
Mhm.
episode 191,
Okay.
and title Agency Unfiltered. And we really talked
Yeah.
about, we had a raw conversation. We were not talking bad about agency life. We were talking about all of the obstacle, the challenges, the
Mm.
pain point she had to overcome, and I share too, when
Mhm.
working for the agency, being one of the only one. And part
Mm.
of our conversation is about resilience. And I feel like because I have been one of the only one, I really was able to develop that patience that
Mm.
comes with, hold on. Okay,
So
hold on.
looking for the word. The
What's
patient
it?
that comes with being the only one that has a distinct cultural perspective on things. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I don't even know where my question was, but like, what's your point, your POV on this, and like, how
Yeah,
can we learn from you?
I've also like I think every single position or most positions I've been in within an agency, I have been the only one with,
Yeah.
the coiled curls and the, locks and stuff. So,
Mhm,
I think it requires a lot of patience, right?
mhm,
Like you said, I think the number one thing is I'm not a big fan of saying like, oh, just assimilate because you don't want to assimilate. I think it's
mhm.
also very important to be authentic, right? In the beginning, I feel like that was the hardest thing for me, honestly. Like
Me both.
as like I'm first generation, right? So as a first generation, right, you're coming into a space where the conversations are not the same.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the biggest thing is really sometimes you really don't know what to say. Like you really don't know how to get the conversation started. Or even if the
Yeah.
conversation does start and they're talking and the certain
Yep.
conversations are happening and you're just like, what you mean you took Billy the Rockweiler to go skiing? Like, like that's just a cultural nuance that's
Yeah.
just that we're just sometimes you're just not aware of, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's important one to stay open minded in a sense of like opening yourself up to different experiences that are not that are not necessarily the norm to you. I think that's one thing that's important to do. And I think secondly it's also about really, I guess, kind of keeping I like it, it really depends on like the point you are in your life, right? I feel like in the beginning you do want to absorb a lot of information, but once you get to a certain point, I think
Yeah.
you're pretty solid in your own identity and you know who you are. And I
Mhm,
think it's important to just show up as who you are. And the
mhm,
thing is, you will have people who will like that, and you have people who
mhm,
won't generally like that, but they
mhm,
still have to work with you.
mhm.
So you know that, and if you stay on top of your work and you are
Yeah.
good at what you do, then things kind of resolve themselves, right? In that sense, obviously being the only one, does always come with that kind of mental pressure that we don't talk about, where you do have to always kind of stay on top of everything, double check things, always want to keep proof of everything, of communications, of the work you're doing, making sure your timelines are intact. I think that is all super important, and those are things that you're not necessarily being told in the beginning, right? No verbal request is an actual request. It
Mm,
has to be written for it to be an actual assignment, right?
mm. That's probably
Things
the best advice these people are going to receive today,
Yeah, like
listening to
no
this.
verbal, like a verbal request is not an actual request, right? Like if
Or
you want it,
Slack,
or a Slack
or
message is
Slack
not
on Google Media.
just
Well, I
hitting your
guess
phone.
it depends on certain senses, but I hear you, and I feel like we need to say it again because, like, at the end of the day, when I train a trader, or even if I talk to anybody, right, they're leaving their company, they're transitioning careers, they just got laid off. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I always ask them like, okay, well, what did you do? Did you take your receipt? And they're like, I
Mm,
don't remember where, how, when to start.
Yeah.
And I'm like, throughout your career working for anybody, whether you're happy, not happy, it does not matter, right? You have to build your own like little black book.
Mm-hmm.
I did this. This is the
Mm-hmm.
company's information. Remove everything that's theirs. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
template behind this that could be used in your next position,
Yeah.
or that can just help you be a better professional, right? Or help somebody else know this information. And so you
Yeah.
got to keep your receipt. And I call
Yeah.
it a win folder. Like, what was
Yeah.
your win today? What was something you're really proud of? Oh, I
Yeah.
helped uncover, that's my friend Carlos. I helped uncover 50K because I just did a simple QA. I went
Yeah.
behind this person like I was supposed to because it's my team. They
Mm-hmm.
QA me, I QA them. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized there's an extra zero there. That
Yeah.
was going to be a big boo boo.
And that could cost a lot of money. Yeah. I think it's the most boring piece and the most important one, right?
Yeah.
Whether if
QA.
you
Mhm.
campaign management, digital marketing, it's the most boring one, but it's also the most important one, right?
Mhm.
And at the base of it all, it's like you do have, agencies that are not following this QA process, right? And sometimes you don't
They
literally
don't
don't
know.
have enough people to follow the QA
That's true.
process, right?
They
Because
don't
it's
know.
like if you have people that are managing 20, 30 campaigns
Mhm.
and you want them to do daily QAs and everything, like there's only two people. Like I don't know how is that supposed to happen, right? Like how are we gonna make that happen? And
Yeah.
that's just a reality and that's why, in the agency, I think that's kind of like when we're talking about like agency and being resilient
Mhm.
is the burnout, right? Like that's like the biggest thing. It's the burnout, right? And it's
Yeah.
also like the realization of you have something like programmatic. And in my like when you're in a bigger agency, it's like, oh yeah, everybody knows and understands and has this
Mhm.
knowledge. You go to a smaller or a mid-sized one and you
Yeah.
realize this is still something completely new to them,
Yeah.
right? The needs and values that go along with this
Mhm.
are not, you're probably the only one that actually understands the work that goes behind it. You need an ad ops team, you need an analyst team, you need you need the actual campaign manager, right? And then sometimes in some cases where like they are agencies that are really well organized within programmatic,
Mhm.
you have the somebody who's specifically for the trader, somebody that's there to only negotiate PMP deals from the different publishers around,
Mhm.
right? And
There's a supply partnership or like ecosystem
yeah,
partnership, something like that. Yeah.
there's multiple breakouts to facilitate not only just, the integration of like
Mhm.
programmatic in your campaign structure, but also the day-to-day management, right? If you want a KPI that's what like direct order or like, cost per order, right? You need a team that's going to be optimizing on a daily basis to make that happen, right? You're not going to get bottom funnel programmatically, at least. Let me
Mhm.
programmatically, you're not going to get bottom funnel top results
Mhm.
with a team of 2, 3 people
Yeah.
for a campaign that's 10, 15, right? Like, and I
Mhm.
just think that's a reality that has to stick.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that just doesn't stick, but it's a reality that's there, right? And I worked for this one client where they were so well organized within it, right? It was a telecommunication company, right?
Mhm.
And it was a team of 200 people for this one account. Mind boggling,
Stop
right? That was only
shouting, will you? 200 people?
right? But it's like for only one account, right? You
Yeah.
had the analyst team that only took care of data, right? They would pull the data, put in these beautiful dashboards from Datarama, or that's their job, right? You had a team that their job was strictly looking for, publishers from all over,
Yeah.
and had a team that was actually talking to the client because within the brand it was like eight different sub brands. Their job was just talking to clients and whatever and just working strictly on strategy. And then you had the day-to-day people who are actually in platform,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Doing every
Mhm.
single, I remember like this was the most Mondays and Wednesdays we would do optimization reports on site domains, right?
Mhm.
Tuesdays and Thursdays we would do either block listing or like it
So
was
good.
just extent
Mhm.
of making sure supply path optimization, like the extent of work being done to have like I don't know cost per order of like $20-$30
Ah,
was
that's so good.
ridiculous,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
ridiculous. So I think, or even like a ROAS, I think like stuff like that is you have to live it, or at least
Yeah.
some like, experience
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to
I have a
understand
question about that. Yeah.
to
That's so
understand what
good. I
you
love what you say. Like you got to live it to win it.
do.
So you know what? That's a good point here. Okay, let's talk about what you just said, okay? Because you said a whole lot, but
I see, and I did.
what the latter was, you got to get it organized. You can't do it all in one. If
Yeah.
Tuesday is your geographical optimization day, where you're gonna make sure everything is with, I don't know, and then you said Wednesday and Thursday is
it's something
supply
else.
path,
Yeah.
Friday is whatever. Sometimes you
Frequencies,
have
frequency
to.
checks, and all that. Like you.
Sometimes you have to. And you know what? We did something similar way back when, where it was on Wednesday, nobody would reach out to a trader. It was like traders don't exist. Whether
Yeah.
you CSAM sales, your boss, your
Whoever you
mama,
are, yeah.
for 3 hours at least, or 4 hours doing that day, it was blocked. Nobody, no disturb, do not disturb. And during that time, what we did is really optimize. And so we would have it where we wouldn't even talk to each other. But if everybody was, some of us were optimizing like sites, the others were optimizing something else. And so if I had a question, I would be like, Courtney, can you come see this? Or Tasha will go to Morgan and be like, don't you have something similar working? Or I heard you said last Wednesday during our Do Not Disturb session that you were struggling with this KPI, right? And that's the time to do it. So we're not telling you that you have to template that, like you really have to, like, on this day only, you must look at this. No, but there are pros where if the whole team is doing something similar, there's learning that happen, right, within that group, because they're allowed, first of all, they're allowed to stay focused and do deep work. Deep work is important, y'all. If you're not blocking 3 hours in your calendar to do one thing only, I'm sorry, 2 hours is enough, because 1 hour is not realistic.
It's not like
It's
deep
just
work.
not.
I think, and it's that there's a requirement of deep work within programmatic that is overlooked, right? Like I feel like now, like I'm in like mid management, and you're in so many meetings, but you still got deep work to do.
You gotta take care of your people. You gotta take care of some clients.
You got to
There's a
balance
big
it.
project. Now
You
that
know,
your
there's
boss is asking you to bring AI into the conversation, you got to look up what AI agent is. You got to look up what Claude does different than ChatGPT.
You want me to make a GPT? I need time to figure out how I'm gonna like configure this GPT and make it work for me, right? I think there's also that's just a reality of it, right? It's sometimes a technical job, right? Or it's a job where like you're completely focused on like making things happen, or between optimizations, you're checking things, you're also even when it comes to insights, right? Depending on the data you want, how deep of these insights would you like, right? Like, am I looking at like a good example is for this urology brand where this was information for me too. The people on the south, like the south of the United States, are more prone to kidney stones.
Oh, for real? Why? Why are we more prone to kidney stones?
Compared to the people on the northern part of the US, right? And I found this out through information, right? Because I was really able to do that deep work and look at different states and why are some states performing so much better than other states, right? For this particular brand. Wow. Why, and it's information like that, right? But it's like, how, if you're only doing campaign management or you're being knocked with all these launch after the launching phase, there's a much more initial phase where it's like, okay, so do you want to see the value of your money, where your investment is actually going, and the data and the information for that, and how to put that together? I think that part itself is what's so important, right? And the client knows that, right? The client knows, and the client wants that, and sometimes the agency wants that too. But it's almost like there's a tug of war between let's just getting enough investment to launch and prioritizing the explanation or the inputting or just explaining the value of what that investment is actually doing, right? And sometimes, like sometimes
I need people to really hear you out. Like, you need to do that extra work, because and that's my biggest challenge with people in the industry to start with. We'll be so quick to say we need this latest thing, technology, to start measuring this and that. And then we got all these nice measurement tools. Some of them actually do work really well. But then you still have to translate this data into the insight that you're saying, right? Like, about this data literally just showed you like higher conversion happening within these states. Well, why? You had to take it out of your DSP, ChatGPT some stuff, show the source, because sometimes there's hallucination. We don't want that.
You have to go to academic source, or sometimes
trust and always verify. And so as you're verifying, you come across this consumer behavior trends that says we're highly most likely to be having kidney stones these days
And
because we live where we live. And I'm sure
yeah.
there's explanation why, right? Maybe it's our food eating behaviors, or I don't know, the air we breathe.
Weather, and the thing is, like, sometimes it depends. Like the client might have a goal or an
Mhm,
objective in mind,
mhm.
but because of these consumer behaviors or these consumer trends, another objective that should actually be the priority, right? This is actually who should we should be, giving the message. This, if we're gonna go bottom funnel, or if we want to go middle funnel, let's go middle funnel to this group of people, because these group of people already have this problem, already have this diagnosis, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And if you don't do the insights or the work to get to that point, that midpoint, there, that conversation is not, then there's basically, like, the research is for nothing, or your investment isn't, you're
You're
not
not
really putting your
maximizing it. Yeah, you're not
yeah,
being efficient.
you're not exactly, you're not being cost efficient, you're not
Yeah,
being, like, technically efficient, right?
yeah.
And I think, and even in that case too, like, the client also needs to be flexible enough to be like, okay, this is the information that I received now.
Oh my gosh,
Okay,
yeah.
so what is the next step? Do we segue? Do we kind of pull the investment from this
Yeah.
piece, make it into like this new, strategy, so we can
Mhm.
invest and take a look at this and see how well this does? Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
But
Man, that's for sure.
I think that's the struggle, where it's, you have creatives need to be made, things need to be done. And sometimes those things do take time. So,
Mhm.
but overall, I think, it's just, that's the process. This is like the process of it.
And that's a good point because our whole conversation is about resilience, right?
Mhm,
And to me, when I hear resilience, to tie back to what you were saying, I
mhm,
hear like how to bounce. It's not just bouncing back, but also how to use this information to make yourself better, right? Because
mhm,
everybody makes mistakes. I always joke that I served a million impression blank impression. It was
mhm.
Harry Steeder word. And Harry Steeder, don't play us. We already give you all the make good you needed in 2015. Don't come back in my DMs and do anything not that you have. But like it was a mistake I had to learn. And at that point, I was 5 years in the industry. Like I
Yeah,
should have known better, but
mhm,
I was rushing. I didn't
yeah,
QA. I didn't
yeah.
push my QA buddy to come back and help me finish this because he was doing
A
17
lot of
people. Yeah,
yeah,
by
yeah.
himself. And so I let it go. And so a week later, we're serving all these impressions. I'm talking about a million impressions, no clicks.
Like, but it's not
But
converting. That's
not
like
no
the
clicks.
worst thing ever. No
This is a
nothing.
weekly client. I said to I had to show this table in front of them. And of course, I didn't have time to optimize during the week. So it went on living this best life. And then I
Yeah.
look at it, and then I had a junior level
Mhm.
programmatic ninja under me. And he looked at me. He was like, oh my gosh, this is me. I was like, this ain't you. I set up this placement. I mean, you're not
Yeah,
going down for my mistake. But
yeah.
it really hit me hard in so
Mhm.
many ways because like I should have known this. I'm the senior in this account. This is
Yeah,
one of our biggest accounts.
yeah,
We had to refund half of my paycheck back, something like that, right? Or we had to make good tripling, whatever. And but with the experience now, that's
yeah,
something like I had to learn that I gotta let it go. I'm never going to make this mistake ever again. I've never made it again. I'm talking about
yeah.
some mistake I made one time. That's it. I made
And
two
I think,
times
yeah,
maybe because you learn from it. But
yeah,
being
and I think,
resilient is like you tell me a mistake you made that you're like, yeah, I did this.
I would like, one, I would, and I think I had a similar problem actually, where very recently, where there wasn't, but I think number one is like not only owning the mistake, but being able to
Learn
pro
from it and
process it, but also troubleshooting,
process.
right?
Oh yeah.
Troubleshooting in terms of just, and this is
What
one of those
happened?
important parts where you wanna document every single thing you do with timestamps added, right? In this case, it was also, so apparently, so it was an interesting thing, right,
Mhm.
where I saw the impressions were firing. I
Yeah.
was seeing impressions, but I wasn't seeing pacing, right? So when I pulled the
Mm.
report, there was no spend, and this was during New Year's, right? From the New Year to this to here.
When we're
And
supposed to be out partying,
exactly. So
you
we were out. So
checking.
obviously we were out, and whoever, supposed certain things were supposed to happen in the back end, like
Mhm.
extending on GCM and on platform.
Oh.
And these are things where it's like, okay, I thought of it, but it's something that I guess when you say extend, that's number two. If you're a manager, be very clear. I think that sounds like, be very clear when you say things.
Yeah.
Like, don't assume that people know what you're talking about
Yeah.
when you stand, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
so,
that's funny.
I think that's also really important. And so, long story short, is I found the mistake, and, it wasn't spending, and we're coming near the end of and unfortunately, the troubleshooting just took so much freaking time.
Hmm.
Like, it took so much time on
Yeah,
the
because you got to
GCS,
investigate your stuff. You
right?
have to be like, let me start here and
On
here.
the platform side, right? So we end up with a month where, this line item, or this, hasn't spent at all, right? So it's really just about being able to navigate. So when you're telling somebody this, right, you're able to say, okay, this is where it
Be
started.
clear.
This is the date it started. This is why it took this long. These are all the steps that were taken. These are all the emails that were sent. These are all the reasons why
Yeah.
this happened, right? Because at the end of the day, when a mistake like this happens, that's really all you can do.
And
It all,
there's a good point that you said, and that's why we recommend hosting all of this communication on the one. And so it can be in Slack, email, text message, another email to a different Gmail, and
yeah,
another Slack, and then you're in project management, and what, like housing all of this conversation within
everything.
one. You need to,
Yeah,
as
you
easy as
absolutely,
like I don't know, a Excel sheet at this point. That's how manually would be, but you got to, because at the
yeah,
end of the day, if you're a trader, you're a buyer, your responsibility is to make sure everything DSP related goes very, very, very well. If shit's popping, it's on you, unfortunately,
yeah.
right?
And that's just the truth of it, right? Like, it is on you, and it's like,
It's on you.
it is on
No
you, really,
pressure.
because it's like, who else knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, like, sometimes you're working with account teams who don't know what the hell you're talking about when you're saying, oh, and it's like, oh, they're looking, oh, but they have impressions. It's like, no, these are projected impressions. These are impressions.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I had that conversation. Everybody looked at me like, I'm like, yeah, like, in programmatic, it's an assumption that's made, and we convert, and that's how we raise our impressions, and that would be the real impression. But you have to have those conversations and stuff. And I think that's
That's so good.
really, yeah, that's really what makes it, like,
Yeah. I feel
all
like
over.
that's so good, because it just made me something just make me pop, like programmatic traders resilience is staying in the work even when the algorithm humbles you,
Yeah,
and going for that work and remembering that work and doing what you got to do, because at the end of the day, like you said, it's on us. I have so many more questions, but I know we're coming to a close here very soon, so I'll ask this quick, like 30-second. Give me your take on, how do you see this whole AI thing take over, or how would you want AI to take over some of these, some of what we just
mm,
talked about? How can it help us stay flexible, become more
flexible. Yeah,
resilient?
I think there's two steps, right? I think the
Mhm,
biggest thing is we want for AI to take care of the mundane things for
mhm.
sure, right?
Oh, you want to stop and go take the baby? That's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay. Go. I'll
And
pause.
okay.
You know what I say too? I have so many more questions, but I want to honor your time. Thank you so much for coming by and saying all these beautiful things. We really need more of you. And this is not the last time we'll hear from Assetou. We're talking about a workshop to do together for you guys, a live one. So you can learn from us and you can learn from Assetou, because she just dropped a lot of gems. But if anybody had to reach out to you and ask more questions, work with you, because all of us are consultants and we're
Yeah.
always open to helping, how can they do that?
So you could definitely on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Okay.
Obviously I'm actually a very active person on LinkedIn.
Oh,
So
good.
Kone on LinkedIn. That's like the Assetou Kone, Assetou
Okay.
Kone. And then
Mhm.
on Instagram too, Flores, FLOREZ
Mhm.
underscore officiel in French, not English. So
Okay.
OFFICEL, not AL.
And we'll have
That's
all of your information in the show notes too. Okay. But you guys
okay.
put some respect on her French. Okay.
In French, yeah. Also, it's more chic, so pourquoi
Voilà,
pas?
c'est ça. Tout à fait, tout à fait. But thank you so much, Asetu. Okay. And again, everybody,
Yeah,
you check the show notes at the bottom of this YouTube video or in the show notes on the podcast, or just holla at me. I will put you in contact. That's what I'm here for. But thank you again for showing up for yourself, learning with us, and don't forget
yeah.
to share and subscribe.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.